before we go in, a little bit about us and Social Current. I'm the founder of Social Current. We were founded about 2 years ago with the goal of helping organizations reach young people more effectively, because we realized a lot of the people making decisions about how to reach young people were not young people, did not make any sense to me. And so I founded Social Current when I was in my sophomore year of college, graduated last year. And we did a lot of work with impact organizations, nonprofits, purpose-driven organizations, trying to help them get on TikTok and Reels and all these other platforms. And then throughout the process, we sort of like learned, how to work with influencers and creators and how we could, tap into their networks and their audiences to help impact organizations. And so we sort of pivoted from doing just the social media piece to actually helping organizations do influencer marketing, still social good influencer marketing. And so we've run some of the largest voter registration campaigns around the Inflation Reduction Act, campaigns around, how, caregiving and how care is a universal concept. And so that's sort of what we do, is we help impact orgs reach more people on social media. And then, yeah, we've got relationships with creators. We know short form in and out. We're consuming content day in, day out. And so that's sort of those experiences that I'll draw upon today to help you hopefully navigate social media. And so short form and content, you're obviously doing this workshop, so you know why it's important, why social media is important, but 59% of the entire world's population is on a social media platform. That's over half. And so it's important to communicate and reach these audiences where they are. And then 73% of consumers prefer to watch a short form video to learn about a product or service. So that's not a blog, that's not a newsletter, that's not a tweet, that is short form content, short form video content, which is also why we're sort of focusing on short form content in this workshop. And then one of the other changes in the last 3 years that has seen the explosion in short form content is a shift from sort of content from people into recommendation-based content. And so with the TikTok algorithm, with the Instagram algorithm, it's less, who posted something 10 minutes ago and more, what the algorithms believe you will like. And so there's been an increased focus on recommendations and content that, is being consumed more actively than like just, location-based content or content from your friends. So social current. So these are sort of some of the important elements of short form that you need to keep in mind. So the first thing, we all know this, but grabbing attention. So a lot of social media is about how you can get someone to watch your video first. And so that means the first 3 seconds of a video are extremely important and need to grab attention so that they can then watch the rest of the video. So even when you're thinking about creating content, the first thing to think about is like, how do I get someone to start watching the content with the first 3 seconds so that they can watch the rest of the video? So spending enough time thinking about how you can grab attention is really important. The second one is giving value. I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about social media, start with asking for stuff. So it's asking someone to subscribe to a newsletter, asking someone to read an article, asking someone to do something versus giving them something. So whether that's educating them on something, whether that's, giving them a free blog post or free, resource, it's like you have to make sure you're giving value to people from the very beginning before you ever ask for something. Storytelling. So it's important to sort of incorporate the key elements of a story. So what are you talking about? Why is it relevant to you? Sort of crafting a story around the content itself is important. The next one is creating native to a platform. So you can't sort of take content that's long form and then just cut it and expect it to perform well on TikTok. You have to actively think about what is actually native to short form content on Instagram, what is native to short form content on TikTok, and then create content that's actually relevant to the platform itself instead of sort of repurposing all the time. There is space for repurposing, but you want to make sure that you actually spend some time thinking about how you can create content that's native to the platform. The other one is short form, not long form. So keeping content quick, succinct, as short as possible is something to keep in mind. And then you can also link short content to longer form content, but giving audiences a teaser into what content you're trying to create is another important sort of short form thing you want to keep in mind. And then using trends. So this doesn't mean you have to hop on every single trend, but it's sort of like if you are able to identify what's trending within the niche you're trying to reach or within the community you're trying to reach, it's important to use trends to communicate your content. I'll talk a little bit more about trends down the line around how to navigate trends, but it's important to sort of use trends, whether that's type of content, whether that's a format, whether that's music, whether that's, text. Using trends to engage your audience is important. However, I will say like content is the more important thing. And so I wouldn't try to, use a trend to then create content. I would try to use content to then fit it into a trend if possible. So content is still important, but it helps if you're able to use trends. Awesome. So navigating the short form algorithm. So the way TikTok and Reels and all these platforms work is they sort of release content in bursts. And so if you've ever posted for a bunch on TikTok or you've seen content creators, especially smaller ones, 100 views. Like what TikTok does is it always distributes your content to 100 people first, then measures how they're engaging with it. So are they all watching the full video till the very end? Are they commenting? Are they liking? If they are, once it sort of meets the threshold, it will then spread to another 1,000. If they like it, they watch it, they view it, it spreads to 100,000. And so if you're not getting to the 1,000, it means the first audience of people that's watching your video hasn't engaged with it enough, hasn't watched it enough, hasn't watched it long enough for the algorithm to spread it longer. And so it's sort of like, how can you appeal to the first base, then the second base, then the third base? So creating content that, if all your content's only reaching 100 people, that means something may not be working. It might be the format, it might be the style of content, it might be the type of content. And so trying to change it up, trying to create a different format and seeing if that reaches 1,000 is what I would recommend. The main thing they measure is watch time. So how long are people watching your content? Obviously, the goal of all these social media platforms is to keep you there longer. And so they reward creators who keep audiences on the platform longer. And so trying to understand, how much your audience is watching your content and what you can do to obviously make them watch longer. So some of the things that creators do that's sort of like a hack is like at the very end of the video, they'll connect the beginning and the end of the video so that it looks like the video is going in a loop. That way, when someone gets to the end, they continue watching the first part of the video and they think the video is still going, but it's actually not. I'll also find an example and send this over, but it's like a way to get people to watch your content longer. Another thing is like people will add captions saying watch till the end. And that's sort of like they'll hint at something happening at the end of the video and that will try to get you to stay till the end. That way the algorithm weights it more effectively. So that's just like something to keep in mind is like watch time is really important. And this is on TikTok, Instagram, any short form video platform. Engagements. So like how much are people engaging with your comment? With your content. So commenting, liking, sharing, saving as well is another feature on TikTok and on Instagram. And then hashtags and search. I know one of the questions was sort of like what hashtags are important. I wouldn't say like hashtags are important in distributing your content to a large audience. So like I wouldn't think too much around like what are the top performing hashtags and all of that stuff. I think hashtags are better when someone is searching for content. And so if someone's trying to go and find like best restaurants in DC, if you're creating content that has hashtag best restaurants DC, your content will come up. And so you want to use hashtags more from a search perspective, not necessarily like because you used best restaurants in DC, you're going to reach 100,000 more people. And so thinking about hashtags from that perspective is important. And there's also like Instagram has said this, TikTok's also said this, but like having 100 hashtags on your post or on your video doesn't really help. It's like pick the top 3, 5, 10 at the max hashtags that is most relevant to your content, and then use those as sort of the hashtags for your post. And then audio, so trending audio, the use of audio is really important. TikTok and Instagram always have trending sounds. So making sure you're using a trending sound if helpful. If your post you don't want to use audio, you could always put it in and then turn the volume to 0. That way you're still using a platform feature. And so these are just some of like the algorithm things that it helps to do. Again, content is the most important thing you can do, but these are some like small things that the algorithm way when looking at your content and looking to distribute it to more people. Awesome. So we're going to do what makes a good piece of content. So we'll start with this video. Let me see if I can.
But not funny, haha. Funny, I'm gonna have a breakdown.
Perfect. So it's a very short video on TikTok. The goal of this campaign was around insurance. It was a healthcare focused campaign. You can see like a few things in the video. So there's attention grabbing text at the very top. It's personal, so it's around the creator's friend, and there's trending audio. If you were on TikTok at that time, you'll remember. So that was the trending audio that everyone was using. And so it has 26,000 likes, reached over 100,000 people. And so you can see attention grabbing text, personal, trending audio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send over a few links, and we can sort of talk about as a group what is the thing that makes it a good piece of content, any learnings we have around it. Perfect. So what makes a successful piece of content? We saw a bunch, but how long is your video? So, all the videos we saw are under a minute. So short form, under a minute is helpful. But what I would do is like, once you've started to build a base, I would experiment with some long form content, because even though less people may watch it, those are the people that actually care about your content enough to watch it the full time. And so you want to sort of build a relationship with them. You want to make sure you communicate with them. And so like starting with short form, but actually experimenting with like slightly longer format content over time is something I would do. Attention grabbing hook within the first 3 to 5 seconds, background music to help the video. Is the sound well between original audio and background music? Like, you don't want the background music to be too loud. Colorful text blocks, or making sure like text actually can be read. Any humorous elements if you want to. And then, does your TikTok follow any trends? So these are just some of the things to think about when, thinking about what makes a successful piece of content. But again, content is the best thing. And if you have good content that you can explain in an easy to understand way, that will always perform well. Perfect. So I thought we could like try a small filming session. All you have to do is pull out your phone, and I'll play this video and we can sort of test it. You can do a camera on, camera off. It's very easy, but let me show you. Super easy. You just point like 3 times, 5 times, 1 time on the screen, and you edit in text after the fact. You can think about what you want to talk about, but it's like you pull out your phone, you place it on your laptop, and you just start filming and you point. And so do we want to try that? So we filmed content. A way to sort of structure this is maybe spending like 30 minutes every week or every month, where you go on the platform, you look through content until you sort of see something you like. Again, this can be hard because you might get sucked in, but trying to actively like consume content with the idea of what content you want to share in your mind. So if you have a specific article you want to talk about, having that in the back of your mind, and then scrolling through and looking at content, seeing what other people are producing and being like, could this article fit into that trend, or could it fit into that trend? And so trying to look for things that you can do, picking a trend, recording yourself right there on the spot, but sort of folding your article in. So for example, if I was scrolling and I saw this video, I'm like, about the child tax credit, it's just a pointing thing. I would be like, okay, what is something I want to talk about? What are 3 facts or 5 facts I want to share about it? I'll film myself pointing 3 times. I'll insert the 3 facts as text, and I'll post it. So it's sort of like, how can you build that muscle of like looking at content with your, looking at content on TikTok or Reels with your concept in mind, and then folding it together. And it takes practice. You have to sort of actively do it. But once you get going, you'll be able to produce content a lot faster if you sort of scroll with intention. Awesome. So launching an organization versus your personal account. So one thing to keep in mind with short form content is like, people do not like following organizations on the platform. People like following individual creators a lot more. But if you were to launch an organization, one thing to keep in mind is like consistency. So you either use one person or, a few people, or you use a lot of people. So like you do interviews with a lot of people, or every, day you feature a different person, different stakeholder. And so being consistent, like having either very few or too many people is something I would recommend doing, having consistent format. So one of the things we did for a nonprofit is they were posting a lot of memes on Facebook and Twitter. And so all we would do is we would take a meme, put it in the background, and just like point at it and react to the meme. And so that's like a consistent format we saw worked, where like one of the videos reached 200,000 people. And so we kept sort of doing that. And then, yeah, like organizations launch, TikToks and Instagrams to sort of like fundraise or get, ask people to sign up their email and things, but like forget to like give something. And so making sure you have a plan around like how you're educating your audience or giving value is what I would recommend. But the key thing is like people like to follow people. And a good example of this is if you look at the Washington Post TikTok, they have a huge TikTok presence, but like the reason they have it is because, the main person, everyone was following them because of all the skits he did and the way he shared content, not necessarily like because it was the Washington Post. Awesome. And then a few ways to sort of get started. Like I said, consume content. I don't think it'll be hard to create unless you can consume. Think of ideas. So like when you're consuming the content, think of the things you want to share and see how the content you're consuming can fit into that. Try editing. So like, even if it's like a random video, like try just sort of putting text, moving text around, like familiarize yourself with sort of like content editing on the platform. And then don't keep stuff in your drafts, like post it, see how it goes. You can always delete it, but sort of like TikTok is the platform where people film, they post. Instagram Reels is where people film, they post. You don't have to keep things, you don't have to keep waiting until you find that perfect piece of content, because you probably never will. And then some tools. So if you want to ever download content, this is a tool, CapCut, iMovie, V, they're all editors. Later lets you schedule TikToks out. Airtable is where you can sort of create and manage a content calendar if you want to. Then obviously TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube and all these platforms. So these are some tools. I'm happy to also like give recommendations on other tools you're thinking of that you want to use and things like that.